Hi everybody. Today I have Michael Brackpool with me. Now Michael, I've worked with for a number of years now in social media, and he's VP Channels and Partnerships EMEA at a company called BrandW, which is one of the world's leading social media and social intelligence companies. So Michael, if you just give a little introduction to yourself and what you do, and then we'll crack on with some questions about social media and customer experience. Thank you.
Hey Stephen, so it's a good intro into BrandW. BrandW is essentially a Brighton headquartered UK founded business that builds technology that aggregates discussion about brands on the internet and analyzes it for our brand customers. And we're about applying that type of analysis and insight to how businesses can bring the voice of the customer into the organization and affect sort of greater organizational change.
Right.
So thank you for the introduction, Stephen, and obviously for the chance to have a discussion today.
Yeah, I mean, just a bit about BrandW, because I think you use the term they've indexed the internet, which makes you a little different from other social media analytics tools. Can you just explain that a little bit?
So the history of BrandW is I guess slightly different. The original application of the BrandW technology, which is crawling technology, is that it was built originally for local government websites to index those properties and obviously to make them searchable and easy to consume. And back in 2006, one of the bright sparks here decided that blogs and forums and sort of what we now know as social media was a growing thing, and actually that there would be a great deal of value in being able to structure and search and analyze and understand what was being discussed on those sites, and hence BrandW was well, at least the first iteration was born. And back then it was one product within sort of a suite of offerings that was made available at the time. Until BrandW became not just the product or the application of the technology, but the entire company itself. And that's where we are today. So, right now we're probably just under 400 people, and we're out in the US, we're in APAC, and we've got a pretty sizable customer base. So it was a great decision at that time.
Yes, fantastic. So, just to explain, I worked with Michael in looking at social media over the last 2 years, particularly in operator environments, telcos environments. Looked at how they've developed things such as social media NPS, how it relates to that, but also how we can look to operationalize social media data and how it picks up emotion and sentiment. And picking up on some of our work and some of your knowledge, Michael, really interested in, because I think you were saying you're interested in this blend of social data and data that matters in an organization. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit about that. Give examples of what interests you about that and maybe some case studies around best practices in that area. Thank you.
So if we take the telco example, I think the thing that starts to become really interesting is organizations obviously struggling for more data. And I think the question is how you derive value from the data that you have. More of it isn't necessarily the answer. And I think where it starts to become really interesting and actually quite compelling is when you start to blend data, when you start to fuse it, when you make different data sets collide. You can start to get an understanding of perhaps trends or themes or sort of issues that you perhaps wouldn't otherwise have visibility of. And I think one of the things that is interesting, for example, is if you were to take social data where individuals are talking about their inability to connect to the network, or perhaps where there was a potential issue, or where there are just recurrent issues with the quality of for example, a mobile network.
Yes.
With that organization's raw network performance, and to understand whether perhaps there was something within the network that you couldn't otherwise identify. So the raw network data was telling you that the thing was up and running, but actually the quality of the experience that people are reporting actually wasn't up to scratch, or certainly didn't meet that customer's expectations, or that group of customers' expectations. So then you can start to understand in a certain location if that was the area that you should invest in terms of your network equipment, for example, because that's the area that is most likely to indicate that poor network performance that didn't meet the customer's expectations may well lead to churn over time. And I think the thing that starts to become interesting is that you could use social as a way to color the data that you have within your organization. And I think those types of initiatives become super interesting. And I think that could relate to a blend of customer service data, for example. So, do we get in that location where people complain about the ability to connect to the network, do we see poor customer service, or is that an area where we need to invest further and drive that as an experience? Do we need to anticipate it in any other areas, for example? And these types of sort of blends of data shouldn't necessarily just stop with social or with network performance or with service, but could easily relate to how organizations spend their media budget, for example, how they recruit, where they hire and push engineers to, for example. And I think, therefore, it can start to just not impact the elements of the business that touch the consumer, but the core mechanics of it as well. So, logistically, can we become a more efficient organization by understanding and anticipating where there may be issues that customers are telling us they have problems that we wouldn't otherwise have heard?
Yeah, and that's a really important point, this notion that I've also heard about situations and defining situations. So picking up your example there of telcos, Michael, if I may. So frequently network engineers look at technical KPI data only, machine data, without that overlay of customer perception. And one comment that constantly comes back is, well, isn't that enough, just looking at the technical KPIs? I think the answer to that is emphatically no, for several reasons, if I may, from my side. One, the technical KPIs have to have a parameter. And is that set to the parameter that people want? Because if it's not, it's just aggregated machine data. Two,
yeah.
We have had examples, actually, Michael, from one client where we found specific situations where social media data was picking up where the network was not optimized, even though the technical KPIs were green. I'm thinking in particular here, if I may, about there are issues of base station down, where a base station is known not to be operational, but is actually causing distress amongst customers who are tweeting about it, but it's assumed to be no issue. The other example I can think of is where indoor repeaters have been put on buildings because there's little cracks in the network that have not been picked up, or there's been poor performance in train station. And again, the technical KPIs have all shown green, but there's still been this issue of network optimization. And beyond just the network issues, there's also, and network sensitivities, I should say, there's also the issue of handset. Even where people may be complaining on social media that there's a handset issue, an issue with the network, I mean, if you look down and see the network is green, you can still get data that actually there may be a regular handset issue. Perhaps it's a phone whereby, or one type of phone that's regularly causing low volume or something like that. So I think there's lots of examples of that, Michael, and even in the marketing environment, if you have a marketing campaign, how is that received by customers? Because customers' perception of marketing overlays their network perceptions as well. Those are just a few examples from our own work, actually, Michael. I don't really have any others. I'm actually thinking particularly of the airline example, actually, you often use. Do you want to just say a little bit about that? Because I think that was a really cool example.
So, yeah, I think there's always an interesting and there's always an interesting element here, which is what the raw data is telling you, and therefore the assumption that you make on the experience that the customer is having and the actual customer experience that customers are reporting back to you. And so in the instance of the specific airline, there was obviously a weather event, which actually incidentally would be another interesting data point to trend over raw network performance and customer experience, that caused significant disruption for this airline. They were able to get planes in the air really quite quickly off the back of what was quite a major event. But in reality, the thing that mattered to customers wasn't the fact that there were some flights in the air, but the key thing that mattered was that the way that they were conveying and communicating that to their customer base was broken. Their website went down. Their call centers were ringing off the hook. And the only way that customers could reach them was via a social channel, because it's immediate and because it's direct. And the thing that truly mattered wasn't that the event couldn't have been anticipated and resolved, because it could have been anticipated and it was resolved, but it was just about how they communicated and handled the customer experience. And I think the key thing there is about how you handle those groups as and when you start to understand that. So do you take particularly vocal groups that are high value to you, perhaps linking it in again to another data point, which could be the CRM system or the loyalty program, and reroute the flights based on the value of certain groups and how vocal they are about the experience that they have with you. And that's the point at which you can start to really use this stuff to optimize how the business is performing and how you operationalize this.
And of course, you can identify your key social media influencers as well from that credit influence. Another challenge I have back though, Michael, is that people say, well, I can understand social media and picking up optimization events or airport events or whatever it might be, but isn't that just a few people tweeting? Isn't it just qualitative information? And perhaps we can ignore it because there's not many people doing it, are there? What would you say back to that?
I think there's a question of understanding the number of people that are talking about this specific event in relation to the brand themselves, which is one thing, and that might be a small segment of the total number of people that are having the broader discussion, which may or may not involve the brand.
Yes.
But I think this touches on a much wider point, which is if you truly accept that the customer in this age has changed and they have access to new types of technologies and they have certain expectations around how brands will interact with them and provide their service, then those people will be vocal. And it's not just the number of those people that are vocal, but the reach that they also have. And the impact that that reach has on their networks and their network's network. And I think the organizations that will structure themselves to take the voice of the customer into their organization and see it as a positive thing, as an opportunity to optimize their service, to make their resources sweat further, to join themselves up, and to have each of their customer-facing roles within the organization optimized and have that filter into the rest of the business, then I think it can only be a good thing.
I mean, do you see, because a lot of companies may also say, Michael, they run voice of the customer surveys, they have their satisfaction or NPS surveys, they have text messaging. How do you see this as a substitute or a complement for all those ongoing activities?
It depends on the appetite of the organization. I think in reality, a lot of organizations that we're working with at the moment use both in parallel, one to complement the other. And some organizations are using this to swap out those other methodologies. I think where it works quite nicely is to take the sort of the greater control that those surveys provide the organization in terms of volume, in terms of regular interaction, and use the real-time unprompted nature of social to sort of fit quite snugly into the positive and negatives of both sides. I don't think this is a point at which it makes sense to swap out one for the other. I think it's a complementary fit.
Exactly. So it's that real unprimed notion that's so important. You're not fed a survey and you respond. You're actually actively going on social media and making a comment. But you did pick up. Sorry. You did pick up on one thing about the use of social, and we're talking about how you blend social data with existing data that matters in the organization. You spoke a little bit about the cultural challenge that has to a business. Could you speak a little bit more? So let's say we do work with BrandWatch, we get the social media data, we correlate it to network or marketing or other activities. then there's, I guess, this cultural business is how you operationalize that. What do you have to say about that, Michael?
Yeah, I think that's a really big, really interesting challenge. I think there are lots of factors at play here. I think the key thing about all of these programs, whether there are big data initiatives, whether there are surveys, whether there is sort of insight reporting, or whether there is social media analysis, is that none of that stuff matters unless somebody in the organization takes an action upon the insight that they've been given. And I think that if you think about the way that consumers have access to world-class technologies and experiences, they have access to Facebook, they have access to Twitter, they're able to use technologies and that are optimized in terms of their experience. And yet you have people that go to work and perhaps don't use the most elegant solutions in the world. And I think there is an opportunity for all of us that build software and technology to take hold of that sort of consumerization, which is a fairly clunky word, but take advantage of that opportunity and take advantage of the fact that there are more millennials working in these organizations, and take advantage of the network effects of those types of technologies to create cultures of analytics. It could be that you need richer visuals. It could be that we need ways of being able to create snappier reporting that serves people exactly the insight they need on the platforms that they want to consume them, and therefore that it's not invasive for them to pick those things up. And I think that's the point at which we can start to create those sort of collaborative cultures.
Yes.
And I think that's a really interesting challenge. I certainly don't have the answer, but I think particularly when you're applying these types of programs at really quite big scale in some organizations of stature, I think that's as significant a challenge as it is providing a customer experience externally.
I mean, do you find because social media picks up information across the customer journey, so you're dealing inside the organization with multiple stakeholders. When I think of my own experience, it's network operations, marketing, customer care. Those traditionally don't really talk very well together, to say the least. I mean, do you find there are some industries that do have cracked this and do get a good single view of customer share well, in your experience, or is it still everybody struggling with this cultural challenge?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think there are some organizations that are doing it better than others, but I don't think that it's necessarily a vertical thing. I don't think that those in FMCG do it better than those in banking, for example, or at least I haven't seen those examples. Where there are organizations that are doing this very well, there is clear consistency and alignment around who owns the initiative. And I think that's the most important thing. I think it's about setting the agenda at the top and having that filter down, and having that consistency and that clarity and that sense of purpose, really. And I think one of the other critical factors is around taking the data points actually out of their silos as well.
Yes.
So organizations have been up to this point hierarchical to do predictable business in a predictable world, whereas the customer today obviously has access to new different types of technology, and there is a tension, I think, between the relationship between the organization and the customer, and the experience that the customer expects. And I think one of these interesting trends is that the marketing organization is now becoming a technology buyer. Marketing is becoming more scientific. It's using data to measure and optimize its spend and its performance. And as a consequence, marketing now owns a whole bunch of data that helps the organization to understand the customer, what they value, how they transact, where they came from, what they also like, and so on and so forth. And that obviously then impacts how an organization might address the experience and the service that it delivers. But it also brings the CIO and the CMO closer together. And I think those are healthy things. If you have consistency of data across the organization, you're more likely to have a single point of truth, and therefore everybody is aligned around how and what they're doing.
Okay, so it starts with leadership. There's a sense of purpose. There's the use of this as a single source of data that combines technology, service, and marketing, increasingly becoming under the CMO, who's increasingly the point to consolidate these cross-journey data points. And they operationalize it, I guess, around multiple KPIs, because the CMO could be about raw sales, I guess. But are you thinking of sentiment? What KPI are you thinking there?
So a lot of the time, obviously it depends on the vertical,
Yes.
and the KPIs that matter to that specific organization. But it's no longer simply about just selling whatever it is that you need to shift. It's also measuring where the multiple touch points that you had with that consumer, where did that originate from, how can we attribute it and therefore optimize our media spend, but also to understand how we optimize our service, because that is a point of differentiation in some of those marketplaces. So from a social perspective, I think the sort of nirvana, the holy grail, is to get to a point where we can start to understand and measure the return on the social media spend.
Yes.
And that's just going to become a broader theme across the board.
Because at the moment, sometimes I've been to organizations where social media is fairly immature in an organization, bought maybe the cheapest tools and still struggling with the ROI question. I'm guessing that's just a sign of immaturity. Are you finding the market's moved on from that kind of situation?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting signals of maturity is, we're back to organizations that want to join up their systems and therefore blend their data.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest theme and the biggest trend that we're seeing at the moment. So, if you were, for example, to be able to join up an unknown customer talking about you online with the data that exists within your CRM system, then you start to build up a much bigger picture around who's talking about you, why they're talking, and actually who they are, and what you already know about them. And I think it's about social becoming a part of the whole rather than just one channel or one piece of technology in isolation.
And I guess this isn't just about mature markets like UK, USA. This is a global phenomenon. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, if you look at the size of, for example, the potential opportunity in China, where a number of brands that we work with are interested in understanding what's going on in that market, how they're positioned, what people think about their products and services of competitors, for example. That's a significant opportunity. It's obviously not without issues, given that it's difficult to get data in that market. But that's one area. There are other big, sizable markets out there, and increasingly we're looking into Latin America and also to Southeast Asia. Indonesia is a very big market where a lot of our big brand customers are very interested in understanding what's going on there. Very sizable social media presence and growing very quickly too.
And I guess this isn't just a question of one-way communication either. I guess this can be used as a pool for two-way communication, community development, and also finding ideas. Do you work in that space at all?
So the BrandWatch platform collects the discussion that's happening online, about the topic or the trend or the brand or campaign that you're interested in. In terms of the engagement side, so being able to directly communicate with the consumers, we have a bunch of partners that we integrate with that enable that type of functionality. And obviously, the interesting part about that is that you can then start to analyze both, the earned discussion about you, the organic things that are being discussed, as well as, the performance of your owned channels, be they Twitter or Facebook or whatever else. And obviously also the different types of discussions that happen within that environment as well.
Fantastic. Okay, Michael. Well, it's been great speaking to you. If people wish to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Should they go to the BrandWatch site or LinkedIn? How would you advise?
Yeah, obviously, if people want to get in touch, then very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, or my email address is michaelb@brandwatch.com.
Fantastic. Good. And the website is brandwatch.com, isn't it? www.brandwatch.com.
It is, yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. Good. Okay, and I think the only thing I'd like to add on is just this notion of the Visio platform that we've used, because it's not just about the analytics, is it, Michael? It's this good, exciting look and feel to the data, I think, that's also worked very successfully in multiple environments as well. And I think that speaks back to the cultural point as well, getting people to look at the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from my perspective, it's about making insight contagious and interesting and compelling, and engaging. And I think the real issue with reporting is that it's I don't know about you, but there are probably a number of unread reports that sit in my inbox on a monthly basis. And the point of the Visio product is that it simply makes data rich and engaging, live, and it draws people in to look at it, to understand what's going on right now, and then to take an action upon it. And I think the other element, of course, is that that's around social data, so bringing the voice of the customer into the business and understanding what they're discussing about us right now, or whether there's a specific aspect that you're interested in. But the ability to be able to display other data sets within Visio, I think, and overlay them with social is where it starts to become really quite compelling and interesting.
Great stuff. Well, Michael, thank you very much for your time. It's been very interesting listening to you and promoting the use of social media, which I think is very much the future of insights and also the future of telcos, if I may say as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for the opportunity.